I wish there was some divine reason why I picked those three to send to you, but actually, I only got the two of them after all, because I had to watch my word count, and my AI sermon kicked off at 2, said that's all you're getting today. So those of you who were here last week, we had some fun with Gina talking about AI stuff. So there's a little document in Washington called the Declaration of Independence. And in the second paragraph of the first article, they settled on the following language. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all, unfortunately, they put men, are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness is different things to different people, right? So I would invite you, I'd like you to think in your Wayback Machine, think about a time when you were happy. A really happy moment for me was, and then just visit that for a second. I still remember walking across Illinois State University for the last time, going back to Wilkins Hall, realizing it was the last time I was going to walk that about a half a mile from center of campus out to where I was. Not only was it the last test at Illinois State I would be taking, but I knew that in a very short months we'd be getting married. And that was another very happy moment. And then there's for me, birth of that first child. Count the fingers, count the toes. And although I had long held that it didn't matter to me if it was a boy or a girl, there was a twinge when it was a boy, gotta admit. And let me tell you, I can still remember the first time with joy and exhaustion of getting out of the water for my first 2.5 mile swim for my Ironman. So, what places make you happy? Not the people, but the places. What are those places that create kind of an inner smile in you? Maybe it's being in the woods or hiking or fishing or swimming or boating. And for some, it's being in the garden and digging, getting your fingernails with dirt underneath it, planting seeds, watching flowers. And for some, it's being in the mountains, maybe climbing, maybe skiing. Or maybe it's just being in the family room, watching TV, fire in the fireplace, or a movie. And because maybe that's where you get to spend time with family as well. And for some, that happy place is wherever the grandkids are. And for others, it might be the kitchen or preparing a meal or sitting around the table with the family with the smell of fresh baked breads. Where is that happy place for you? Well, for me, one of my favorite places under the heavens is the Boundary Waters Canoe Park, listening to the loons and throwing out a lure. Or I must admit, a newfound one is snorkeling in Raja Ampart, which is, that's one of my many, many pictures of the turtles in that area. So what are the ingredients then that help you be a happy person? What are those things that enable you to be happier? Food, family, clothing, health, of course, good relationships, roof over your head, money in the bank, knowing that you're loved, all of these, some of these. So what are the ingredients that help you bake a cake of happiness? So that theme of happiness, that's the theme I want as we approach the New Testament gospel lesson today, which Linda read for us. The gospel lesson for today comes from what is referred to as the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus begins with what we understand these iconic words, blessed are the, okay? Now, in today's English version, it reads happy, right? So happy are the peacemakers. Happy are those who mourn. Happy are okay? And then they list these 9 qualities. Jesus lists these 9 qualities that make for happiness. So here's what's going on. A large crowd has gathered down by the shore of Lake Galilee, and Jesus takes up 12 and additional ones likely up on what's referred to as a mountain. But even by our standards around here, having been there, Betsy and I, it's more of a hillside, really, at best. But it's really flat over there, and for them, any chance that they got a hump, they're going to call it a mountain, okay? So these are the hills overlooking Lake Galilee, or Lake Gennesaret, it's sometimes called, which are far more hills than mountains. So on these hills above Lake Galilee, Jesus was going to teach his newly called disciples what he understood. Remember, these are like fresh out of the box, newly minted disciples. What his understanding of what life with God was all about. Fundamentals of God, 101. Our journey with God, 101. He could have named it, named this class. So think about it. What is Jesus going to say? What's Jesus going to teach that stands at the core of his understanding about being a God follower? Prayer? Yeah, you think, of course, prayer. No. Reading your Bible? Or for him, it would have been the Torah, Hebrew Scriptures? No. Talking about love and justice? No. Jesus begins with something much more basic and simple. He's my kind of guy. It's a KISS guy, right? Keep it simple, right? So Jesus begins his teachings with his newly called disciples about happiness, about the simplicities of happiness. Why? Well, I think one of the things that we humans have in common around the world is our interest in, our quest for happiness. Can we agree on that one? Yeah. Can we agree on that one? Yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, I'm so I'll make sure we're awake. Okay. So whether you're rich or poor, young or old, male or female, non-binary, yeah, we all want happiness. Happiness is something that we are all in for. So I invite you to think about it this way. So that there are 9 streams flowing into a lake, and we're going to call it Lake Happiness. I like this. You can get anything you want with AI these days. Lake Happiness. I said, AI, make me a lake with 9 streams going into it. I didn't count them. So these 9 streams come together to form Lake Happiness. But interestingly enough, Jesus doesn't use the word happy. Doesn't use the word happiness. Doesn't use the word blessed. Today's English version uses the word happiness. New Revised Standard Version uses the word blessed. But the Greek text, according to going back to my Greek professor, the Greek text is best translated by the word joy. See, happiness comes from the Latin hap. Hang with me here for a second. It's about what your circumstances are. So it is our circumstances that make us happy. I'm happy today because of. I'm happy today because it's Christmas. I'm happy today because it's my birthday. I'm happy today because I got food on the table. I'm even happier because someone else fixed it for me. I'm happy today because I could sleep in. I'm happy today because I ran into you. See, those external circumstances, that's what makes one happy. Where the biblical concept of joy comes from the Greek word makarios, and so this really is something it still takes me, I struggle to wrap my head around it. We can be joyful and unhappy at the same time. Okay? And it's such a fundamental, important theological understanding. That's why when these seemingly contradictory statements from Jesus, some of them are like, well, hey, how come those both be true? How can you be joyful and unhappy at the same time? Well, you can be, Jesus says, because happiness is dependent upon our circumstances, where joy is connected to the Spirit of God within us. See, the Spirit of God is what brings us joy. And ain't nobody gonna steal my joy. How many of us know that song? Okay, just a few of us. Ain't nobody gonna steal my joy, okay? It's the Spirit of God that puts the smile of God in your heart. Ain't nobody gonna steal my joy. But yeah, my happiness, yeah, I'm afraid that can come and that can go. You know, there are all the times where, you know, I'm not very happy. But somehow, I mean, and it's not easy, but this is such a crucial thing. It's really kind of a litmus test about how strong the love of Jesus is down deep in my heart. Because if the love of Jesus is down in my heart and my circumstances change, that doesn't change the fact that the love of Jesus is down in my heart. And friends, this is so critical. That's why Jesus, right out of this is boot camp. This is Jesus boot camp right out of the beginning. It's a knowing that the circumstances of life, be they good, be they bad, that God is there with us. Yea, though I walk through the very valley of the shadow of death, right? I'll fear nothing because God is with me. You can't steal my joy. You can take my happiness, but you can't steal my joy. Your rod and your staff, O Lord, they comfort me. And because of that, we can be joyful during unhappy, during difficult circumstances. See, Jesus took those freshly minted disciples and shared with them what mattered most to him. And it was to have an understanding that your circumstances can change, but God's presence does not. And it is God's presence that brings us joy. Otherwise, if God's presence doesn't bring us joy, what's the point after all? So 9 Beatitudes. Like Lisa said, I forgot. I was hoping to make it to 3, but I only got 2. So the first one, Jesus says, joyful are the peacemakers. Joyful are those people who work for peace. And my, oh my, do we need to work for peace? Because there's a profound lack of absence of it. So have you ever intentionally walked into conflict? Or maybe found yourself at the very heart of it? Or maybe I should ask the question differently. Anyone here never been involved in conflict? Well, of course, we all have been involved in some kind of conflict. It takes courage to be a peacemaker in those kind of situations. When we're not directly involved, we might say, I'd like to exit stage right. See, it's no fun to get between two who are fighting. Some of us grew up, not saying myself necessarily, but some of us grew up with parents who fought and who had the unenviable position of like being caught in the middle of that. Some grew up watching a parent fight with a sibling, a brother or sister. I remember more than once I was caught between my brother and my dad. And clearly, it was my freshman year, I think, pretty much in high school. And my brother was dating somebody, and they've gone to their rewards. So I can talk about it pretty openly. My dad did not like who my brother was dating, and he was super clear about that. And so mom was there to play hog pile. She was like all in on this too. And my brother was just like, well, you can imagine teenager's response. They're going to go, oh, sure, Dad, you don't like her, I'll dump her. No, that was not going to happen, And so they fought, and it just ripped me up, And I'm not sure to what extent I ever got involved, but I wish I could have been a better peacemaker. Or perhaps you have two friends who are fighting, and both of them want you to weigh in on their side, right? Yeah. Or on a more global level, it takes courage to step into a discussion, into an argument, when it's clear that it's really about racism. racism at the heart of it, or prejudice, which are running deep and hot these days. It takes courage to step in when two members of the same family are fighting, and you try to step in to make it better. So I clearly remember preaching. It was over at Antioch, and we had kind of a theater in the round, and it made it interesting because I had people here, all the way to people over there, and so forever I was doing this. Well, one time, and the door was pretty much there. In walks this guy, and man, this guy had to go to some special store to buy his clothes because, like, his arms were like the size of my thighs. I mean, well, so I talked to him afterwards, and he just spent, 8-10 years in prison or something. He probably killed somebody. And so he became a regular attender. And I can't remember his name. But then he had a child a while back, and so he wanted to get that baby baptized. And I clearly remember this. I went over to the house, met with who I thought was like everyone in the family, and I had this memory of him saying, now, there's one guy I don't get along with very well, but I don't think he's going to show up for the baptism. I'm like, good, okay, whatever. That's on you guys. Well, he did show up, and so we have the baptism. Everything goes fine, and we're meeting in the fellowship hall afterwards, and somebody comes like running towards me. He says, "Pastor Kurt," he said, "man, there's about a fight ready to break out in the parking lot." So I'm like, okay. So I go running out there. And here's Mr. Johnny Atlas over here, ready to start. And it's I think it was like his a sister's husband or something like that. Anyway, they were family, and they were just about. And I just without thinking, I just walked right in between them. And if I would have thought about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But Jesus, blessed are the peacemakers. I mean, afterwards, people were like, "You were crazy for doing that." I says, "Well, no, I just didn't know what I was doing." But we're called to be peacemakers. And there are situations where we'd really rather run from it. I mean, we don't even want to walk. We'd like to run. And sometimes even thinking about it gives us a pit in our stomach. But when you try to be a peacemaker, because when you try to be a peacemaker, you can get hurt. You can get someone mad at you. And Jesus said, joyful are the peacemakers who are in very unhappy circumstances and who still work for peace. I'll give you the courage and the compassion to work to resolve the conflict. So as I said, for many of us, our natural response is to go the other direction and simply hope it'll go away. But instead of running away from the conflict, Jesus directs his followers right into the heart of it with the clear goal then of being reconcilers. Paul would go on to say, that we are called to be reconcilers for Christ. As Christ has reconciled us with God, we are now to help reconcile people to one another and to God. Jesus says to us today, go into unhappy situations. I'll be with you. I'll give you the courage. I'll give you the words. I'll give you the wisdom that you need. Joyful are those who work for peace in very unhappy circumstances. This ability to wade in the water is what's really needed today. And it sounds so preacher-esque to say, but we need it more, perhaps now more than at least in my memory. And again, that sounds so cliche to say, but today's conversations around what's happening in our national leadership is unprecedented in our lifetimes, at least here in the States. And conversations around this topic is ripe for potholes. We do well to remember that we are a country comprised of immigrants, except for those who were here thousands of years before us, and which is our true original sin. We do well to remember Jesus' words, "I was a stranger and you took me in." Do we ever think that God sees borders? No. See, conflicts, they're not happy places to be, but that's where Jesus sends his disciples. So the second one, I'm not going to get to the third one today. Second one, Jesus said, joyful are those who mourn. for they shall be comforted. Now that's a strange thing to say, right? Joyful are those who mourn. It's like an oxymoron. It's a self-expressed contradiction. Well, perhaps not. When might we be joyful in the midst of mourning? Well, I've seen it, and perhaps you have as well, when we've said goodbye to a loved one, and we knew that loved one has gone on to spend eternity with God. So, even while people are crying at the service, at the memorial service, the funeral service, at the same time, they are aware of the joy of God's presence, both here and of eternity. This is about one of many stories I could tell. So Walter knew his time was short, and Walter had this great voice, and he had sung, he told me, at so many funerals and weddings that he'd lost count. And so as his time was growing closer, he planned his funeral with me, and he said he wanted a Dixieland jazz band at his funeral. Okay, so the day came, the memorial service was held, and Dixieland music was played. We were all smiling, as it was one of the most joy-filled Sundays I've ever been a part of. And after the funeral, the family gathered in the fellowship hall and danced to their father's recorded music, because he also played the clarinet in a dance band in the 40s, and some of it had been recorded. Tears of joy as everyone danced their way into the evening. So I understand those words. Joyful are those who mourn. As I reflect on that, there's a proverb that says, all sunshine and no rain makes for a desert. I found that to be true. Someone once said, if you do not drink from the streams of sorrow, the streams of sympathy will soon dry up. Or perhaps you've heard it said, into every life a little rain must fall. Mothers, you know that well. And when the rain falls in our lives, it gives us a new understanding, a new appreciation, and a possibility of a new compassion, for a renewed compassion for those times when the rain falls in someone else's life. Right? We become more sensitive to others after something we've experienced in our own life. We are incomplete. We are less than if we've never gone through or experienced hardships or difficulties. Some have picked up an understanding that a life of God creates a wall of separation from hard times, and that when we hit the little bumps in life, they say, where's God? When in fact, one day we can look back and see those little bumps might just be, in fact, there helped us prepare for greater challenges in life. Because as we overcame the little bumps in life, we realize that we do so with God's help. It's truly a gift to have the ability to grieve and to feel sorrow. Dare we say, if we don't have that within us, that we can't feel joy? If you have drunk from the cup of sorrow, you more fully enter into the hearts of others. If you've been wounded in life, you can become a wounded healer. So part of our discussion then, as we're having as a nation, right, so we're being told that we're to live out of fear. Jesus says live out of love. I listened to a lady, Anguish. For 2 years, she'd been working to adopt Syrian children. She finally had all the paperwork in place. Ages 4 and 6 were to come. Mother and father had been killed in the war in Syria. It still rages to this day. And the paper went through. The order came out, no additional refugees from Syria. She sobbed. I wish I could say we can't give in to the climate of fear, but we can. In truth, we can give in. It's a choice. We always have a choice. John, over in his book that we know as 1 John, said, perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love casts out fear. Yeah, remember that one, okay? As followers of Christ, we're not to bend the knee to fear. And that's so hard at times. We're not to bend the knee to fright. We're not to bend the knee to panic. We're not to bend the knee to alarm. Jesus said, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you shall find rest. Don't we know it's easier to love? It's easy to love those who love you, look like you, talk like you, believe like you. It's easier, isn't it? Even in churches, those discussions can be difficult. It's easy to avoid that discussion. It's easier to bury our heads in the sand. We might find ourselves saying, I don't need any more anxiousness. I don't need any more anxiety in my life. To which Jesus says, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Yes. Filled with joy are those who have engaged with mourning. I know, it makes no sense. So I'd like to leave you with some famous words from Karl Barth, a famous theologian, who said, a generation that has no great anguish in its heart will have no great music on its lips. That's true. Great music and great art are born in times of anguish and adversity. And so are great hearts. Great hearts are born in times of adversity and anguish. I suspect you know that to be true. Jesus did as he gathered those on a hillside long ago. See, joyful are those who long for peace and who are willing to risk their own for the sake of others. And joyful are those who mourn, for they will find themselves comforted. So happiness comes and happiness goes. But the joy of the Lord down deep in our heart is to stay. Oh Lord, that's it may have been Follow God 101, but it was a master class in what our connection with you can mean in our lives. And it's one that's tough because we can blow like a flag in the wind of happiness. But help us be more like the flagpole that is grounded and stable because of the joy that you have placed in our hearts because of our relationship with you. So thanks be to God for you, O Lord.